Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe's Chop Shop. This week we get a visit from the engineer and then we get sidetracked and make a steering column. So the day has finally come. I had the engineer come around this morning. There's a few things he doesn't like about this, most of it, but there is workarounds. So I want to use the Saura subframe for reasons. He would suggest putting a different front end in it, but I want to try and do Saura stuff all around. So there is more steps to it, which is fine. So what we're going to end up doing is cutting this off back here on like a 45 and then making a new rail from here forwards, which will make the rail come out further to out here and then have a small scale up in it for the top arm, and that'll bring the whole thing over so we can actually get to the steering, because he doesn't like the idea of having a tube in there with the intermediate shafts through it. So it'll end up being about 75mm RHS by 150, 3 or 4mm, whatever I can get, and then probably a plate either side, and definitely a plate either side down here where it joins. So that's something we have to think about, and it's also going to have a transition piece through here, which I'm going to have to make. So that'll be a fun little job. So we're going to have to move everything over, which means most of this is going to have to go, but I can make a lot of it and then cut this off, put it back in. So that's the main problem. The next problem is the airbags that I chose he didn't love, because they are for like a strut tower car, not a shock. So I need to try and find some that are more suited to a shock type car, which is going to be a little tricky for the travel that I want to try and keep. So that's another problem. And then he mentioned doing some X bracing on the chassis. That's a later problem. We didn't really go into depth on that one. And then back here, we spoke about moving the rail in so you can get your strut tower through here. Then the airbag is the same problem as the front, and then thickening all of this up, which is kind of what I expected anyway. So not a huge surprise, I guess. A lot of work still needs to be done, which I did know, and a lot of reworking, which I kind of figured was going to have to happen, but that's how he wants it, so that's fine with me. That is what we'll do. So I would need to move this rail pretty much in line with the back rail back there, and then also thin it up a little bit, and then same on this side, just so it matches, and then get that done, get it to a stage where he's happy with it, or where I'm happy with it, and it's got the airbags in it, like I've got the airbags, and then he'll come back and have another look and see where we're at, and then hopefully it'll be okay, and then I can move to the back. So bit of stepping backwards before we can go forwards, but that's kind of what I expected. That's why I didn't finish weld anything, because I knew that it was going to have to get changed anyway. But we have that information now, so we can keep moving forwards. Now, after my visit from the engineer, I obviously need to change a few things. So that is unfortunate. It's not disappointing or anything like that. I did expect that I had to change some stuff. It's a bit more than I expected that I had to change, but that doesn't really matter. So we'll get it done and it'll happen. But it's not happening this week, because I'm going to jump into making a steering column, because that seems like more fun than redoing everything I just did. So let's do that. So Mr. XA Coupe guy that doesn't post on YouTube anymore, still a good dude, but doesn't post on YouTube, gave me some XY/XW steering columns that are both column shift manual. So I want to go column shift auto in this thing with a ratchet shifter. So what I'm going to do is cut and shut this until I can make it work, basically. So he's given me 2 of these because he doesn't need them anymore. So I can cut these up and mess around with it without feeling bad. So I'll dig into that later, but I don't know how I'm going to manage it. But we'll work it out. It'll happen. It'll happen. Side quest number 1 is making this steering column fit. So I don't need this anytime soon, but I want to have a proof of concept all mocked up. So I haven't filmed anything, I've just sort of got on with it. And to this point, so now I can sort of show you what I've done. So this sleeve in here used to move in and out slightly, and it also rotated to pick up different gears. And then I've cut off just the tiniest little bit on this end of that shaft, so it comes out a little bit further and will get stopped, which is good. So now all it will do is rotate. So I've only got one moving lever up that end, which I have used this one. So this is all XY, XW parts. So this one's going to be on the outside of this guy, flapping back and forwards, and that'll go to a ratchet shifter, and we can have ratchet column shift. Now to make all that work, I've had to go and get some bearings. So these are the ones I'm using. So they are going to go on this end and on that end and hold this shaft nice and central, because originally this had bushes, and bushes kind of suck when you can have bearings. So those bearings should go into or over the top of that center section there, and then into the inside of here, and then on the other end goes over this and into the back. Now it is going to need some minor modification, so be prepared. But what I've done is just made a little aluminium bush there, so that was just to stop it coming through anymore, and that seems to have worked. So I'll knock that off and replace it with a bearing and see how far we can get. I also made the gear knob that I got from Japan fit on the column shifter. So I need to make this work now, because that fits and it looks great. Ridiculous, but great. I'll start tinkering, see how far we can get. Step number 1. So open this up to the outside diameter of this, the inside diameter of that. So now that fits on there very nicely. So now I'll put all this back together and we should get our spacing. Second thing is I've cut all the springs off of the inner column. So the step I took at the other end has been a bit more challenging. So I've taken off a couple of millimeters off of here. I took it off so slowly I don't actually know how much I took off of there. And then this piece I've left alone. And then this piece, which holds the indicator stalk, I've just taken it in a little bit, taken a little bit off the end, and then it seems to be okay. And the other thing that was stopping me is this groove here, which picks up on that little nub. Just needed to open it up a little bit, because now it's in further, the taper had actually shrunk. So I just took a little bit off of here, and it seems to fit on a bit better now. So I'll try and put all of these bits together and show you how it works. So that was the ticket. Just tickled everything in the back of here and got it to slide on a little bit further. So I'm pretty happy with all of that. Now the circlip is in here, and there's a bearing at the other end, so the new bearing that we just bought. So nothing slaps around anymore. It's nice and direct, which is good. So I didn't end up using this bearing. So I'll put in over the top the bearing I did use. On that end, I just had to open it up a little bit on the lathe. So that's all good to go. I made my gear knob fit, like I said earlier, and I've just got a pin in here for now. But now we've got heaps of articulation. I'm going to have to restrict that down the line, but there's no, or very little, back and forth movement. And there'll be even less once this is actually all together properly, because none of this is even bolted together. It's just the circlip holding it all. So pretty happy with that. Get some ratchet shift in action. Go on soon, hopefully. Thanks again to Graham for donating the column. So the next problem that the engineer had with the Desoto is the steering. So this is a XY/XW steering column, the inside section. Now he doesn't like rag joints, which is fair enough because they're gross. So he suggested cutting this off and getting it machined and rah-rah, and getting a uni joint on here, which will cost a lot of money to make it proper. And then I suggested, pretty sure K70s have the same bottom section, but they have a uni joint on them. So I've sourced myself a K70 steering column. Shout out to Noob Auto Parts. Thank you for that one. Midnight delivery sort of thing. So what I want to do is rip this center section out and see if the bottom half is the same as this. Because if my memory serves me correct, it is the same, just with a uni on the bottom. Because that would be really handy. So I'll rip this apart really quickly and hopefully it's the same. Well, would you look at that. So this is the K70 one. Has a bearing on it already, which I'm going to have to get rid of because I've already got a bearing for the other lot, but it's exactly the same. It's just shorter. So I'll rip this piece off and rip this piece off and try and put them around the other way. So I've got the two columns apart, Falcon, K70, piece in my hand is Falcon, piece in the vise is the bottom half of the K70. Look at that. So I'll knock that in and hopefully we have enough length overall to actually work in the column for the Falcon. Otherwise I'm going to have to shorten everything, which will be really painful. So hopefully we can make this work. Sorry there's so much stuff on my bench, but I am going to have to shorten the column outside. So this is basically lined up here. If you come along, we're about maybe an inch and a half short. So if this bearing is the same outside diameter as this guy, I'll have to bring this section here up to about here. So about 2 inches. So I think this will work, but if I'm going to do that, I'll make it 3 inches, make a bit more engagement here. Everything will be sitting nice and happy. And that just saved me like 900 bucks. So an afternoon of fiddling around with that, and we should be good to go. So I've cleaned the bench a little bit. This is a K70 column up to here, and then Falcon from there. So this one is the K70 top half. This one is the Falcon bottom half. Now, as you can see, that's supposed to overlap about that much, which when it's on the Falcon shaft is about there, and it's actually longer. So what I'm gonna have to do is shorten the bottom half of this. I think I've already said all this, but it's probably a little bit clearer now. So I need to take about 3 inches off of that brown section down there. I'm not gonna do that right now, but that's the plan. Then I was just looking into the front half of the steering. This is the Soarer, so the front suspension. So uni joint, same size as the K70. And then this goes to double D shaft, and then it has a spline section here. So I'm going to take it into the vise and knock this section out, and that actually will go onto any double D shaft. So like this one, for example, or this one, or for example, the same thing that goes in there. So I could have a nice big long length of D shaft and put it in there, put that one on the other end, which is exactly what we need. So I have a feeling it's going to need another uni in the middle because there's going to be a whole lot of angles, but it all fits. So I'll knock this apart and double check all of that before I get too excited. So with the little rubber piece off, now you can see, so this is the external piece. So the inside of that is double D 3/4, and that is external double D 3/4. So knock this off, see if it fits. Piece of cake. So knock that off. You can see that this guy here, exactly the same as the K70 top half. And then this piece is actually the same as the bottom section of the K70, just a little bit longer, which is good to know because I can swap those over if need be. And this one has a little bit of damage on it, so I might actually swap to another one. But I know where to get them now, and I'm sure that there's a million Toyotas that are the same. So that's pretty good. And then this is the section we need to go to the rack. So in theory, if I had a piece of double D, I don't currently, could go inside this one and inside that one and make this one big long guy. So proof of concept. Now to get some parts. So I spent a bit of time on the lathe making this guy. Turns out, don't need it. So in here, there is actually a really thin piece of plastic that wasn't on here, it was on the other one, and that makes this fit nicely. So that fits on there nicely now, and the column is pushing itself out the back, but something like that. And then the steering, sorry, the gear stick shifter guy can go straight in there. So I'd like to make this fit in there nicely and not wobble around, so any movement is this guy, because that should be good and not have any once I bolt it all together. So then I just spoke to the engineer again. He's happy with the K70 Falcon solution. I just need to make it engage more. So I'll have to cut a little bit off of here, and then the inside tube, which looks like this, I'll have to cut that down a little bit as well, which I'll probably have to cut in the middle, but then I can like sleeve the inside or whatever. Not too much of a problem, can't do it right now, but not too much of a problem. And then the big bearing I adapted to suit actually fits pretty decent. If you're doing this at home, the K70 original bearing actually almost fits in the stock one of these. It's like the tiniest bit, like 1 millimeter, take it off, and then it would fit in there perfect. So I wish I'd done that to start with, but here we are. So that is all sorted. I need to cut it shorter, and then I need to find bolts for Falcon stuff. And then this piece, I need to find the bolts that hold it to the column. So I know what they look like, I just cannot find any. So I think I have to make some, which is not the biggest issue. Just weld and grind some more. So that'll bolt on like that. Then we have this. Hopefully most of the movement's taken out of that. I hope that didn't break. Hopefully the movement's out of this, because that has a lot of flobble in it when it was together before. So I think that's everything for now. But I have a little bit more work. I'll do it when I come back. So it's a new day. I'm going to get into this steering column again. So after speaking with the engineer, we want to cut about 3 inches out of here, get this engaged a whole bunch. Sorry, 2 inches. But I think 3 is probably a good idea, because I actually don't mind how long or short this is, and more engagement isn't going to be a bad thing. So because I live in a country that uses a good measurement, I'm going to use millimeters, and I'm going to cut however many this is out of it. So let's just call it 70, and I'm going to cut it out up here instead of down there, because this bit's nice and long, obviously, and it doesn't matter how long it is or how short it is. So I'll go over everything, make sure that's going to work, and then cut this guy in half. Before I do that, I need to put a line on this so everything stays oriented exactly as it is. So the way I normally do that is get a piece of angle line, put the angle line on here, and then that'll actually self straighten to the tube, run a line along it, and call it good. So I'll have a bit of a play, and then I'll cut this thing in half. Another thing I should note is however much I shorten this, I need to shorten this guy exactly the same amount. So I'll work it out, but I'll make sure that exactly the same amount taken out of them. So I've got the outside column cut, we've got the inside column cut. They're both cleaned up, and just to prove that I did a pretty good job, this is the piece I cut out of both of them, and they're exactly the same length, which is what we wanted. So we've got a piece of angle line in the vise here, and the idea will be that we can line this up. That's the wrong end. That we can line this up in the angle line, and then weld it in, and it will be nice and centered. So I'll have a play with that, I'll get it all tacked together, make sure it runs nice and true, and then we should be good to go. Now, just to point out, this is the exterior column that holds the bearings, and this is the interior column that changes gears. So none of this is to do with the actual steering. You can't cut and weld steering, it's just not good unless you get it done properly, and then it costs a fortune. So this is just the outer skin, it's nothing to do with the actual steering. So just keep that in mind. I'll get this tacked up and see how far we can get. So I've got it all tucked back together. So this is shortened, the inside is shortened, everything lines up perfect again, surprisingly, and it all still rotates really nicely. So now I can pull it apart, finish weld everything, grind it all back, and then hopefully assemble it for one of the last times. So I got this fully welded, just ground it back a tiny little bit, just to take the edges off basically. Painted it black, and then this one, same sort of story. I just don't want to paint it black because this is brown, and I don't want to have a big black smear everywhere, so I might just put some tape around it and paint it black to this bit, so like this section is black. Call it good. So I'm pretty happy with that. And we have the piece we cut out. Everything can go back together now for good, I think. For good. I'm sure I'll pull it apart again. So I have the steering column all assembled again. I've put a new bearing in here. That is the part number there. It was like $50, which is an absolute joke, but here we are. I've got an indicator stalk to go in here. I don't have the bolts to hold this piece to the column, and I don't have the bolts to hold the indicator stalk in there, but I'll get that shortly. And then I also have a new indicator stalk itself. So I have everything. There's a boss kit coming, and I have the Grant adapter, and then I have a steering wheel. So that will be all of it done except for the mounts once I get the bolts. So they're on their way, and then a couple I'll have to probably make something up, and then I'm gonna have to make some mounts to hold on to this thing nice and sturdy. So I'll have a look into that maybe tomorrow. And then I also have a uni joint on the way to replace this mess, and also one to replace the bottom half where this Sora goes. So side quest number 1 seems pretty good. So I'll get the last few bits and finish this off and show you how it looks. So that is as far as I can get for now. I need 2 more bolts for the steering column. I'm pretty sure I had them when I pulled everything apart, and they have disappeared, and they're just a little T-bolt. There's nothing too fancy. So I've got some bolts coming. They're sitting, waiting for me to pick them up, which I can't do until tomorrow. So I will get back into this and we'll get this steering column finished off. So I finally got back into this steering column, and after looking for the replacement bolts to go in here to hold the top part of the indicator stalk on, I decided that they were ridiculous. I found some used ones for like 20 bucks. So I bought a couple of these stainless M6 bolts. Now if you're going to do this at home, you probably only need 25 mil, if that. And then I ground down 3 sides, so it was just a little hook. Hooked it in, bolted it on, nice and sturdy. So that was really successful. So now I have a couple of these spare and I could do it again. So pretty happy with that. I'll put in the indicator stalk now and show you how that goes. So another Rare Spares product, and here it is. So it comes with the plug off of the back, so you can feed all the wiring through and stuff, and then this needs to bolt on there. And then I also bought the indicator stalk itself, part number there, in brown to go with the interior and the steering column, and then that threads in this hole here, and you have your indicator stalk. So I think that will finish up the steering column nicely. It's never ending with this thing. So we got some M4, I think, bolts in there. Don't know if that's the right thread, but they went in. And then the indicator stalk is threaded in. And of course the paint chips, even though there's tool grooves right there. So that was good. And then you put the boss kit on, which is easy, that's nice. And then this thread here is really strange. So I haven't finished this episode off because I've been looking for a nut for the end here. So nothing I had fit on this side, on this thread. And when I Googled it, it came up with some random sizes. So I was pretty confused. I took this into United Fasteners and then they basically told me the thread was bad. Didn't look very bad, but I just cleaned it up and straight on. So it's 5/8 UNF, which is really hard to find on the internet. Falcon column, 5/8 UNF. So now I can get the boss kit, which is a SAS item, so this can be engineered, which is what I'm after. That needs to clip on there somewhere, like that. Then we can put the nut on and bolt it down for good. For good for now, anyway. Now with the boss kit properly bolted on, I can bolt on the grunt adapter. So this changes it from the 6-bolt pattern to a 3-bolt pattern, which is common for like the old American cars, which will make sense in just a moment. Now for the final piece. The steering wheel I got in Japan at Moon Eyes on my birthday last year. Look at that. Shiny purple glitter. Ridiculous. So the horn button is not really a horn button, it's just a metal cap. So that's supposed to go on there like that, but you need a like a ring to hold it on, which I don't actually have. It doesn't come with the steering wheel, which is a bit weird. But I also, if I need to run this, or if I'm going to run this, I want to have a horn button either in the center of the steering wheel or I need to relocate it. So I can put a button in there, right in the center of the steering wheel for the horn. So that's a later problem. I will write it down and I'll get to it eventually. But for now, that is a steering column finished. So let's unwrap this gear knob, see what the whole thing looks like. Love it when a plan comes together. I realized it's nearly 11 months to the day that I bought this. 11 months ago today, I bought this stuff. So finally good to be able to put it to, I'll say use, but put it into plan. So the only thing left to do for the steering column other than the horn button is to replace the uni joint, which I have bought, but the shaft itself is a bit worn, so I'd like to get another one, but that can be off camera. So there we go, steering column from a XY Falcon modified to suit a K70 steering section, a different shifter, ratchet shifter, steering wheel. A lot of work, but not a lot of progress. Oh well, it's like that sometimes. So that was a lot of work to get a steering column to fit, but it all works together now, and the bottom half has the uni joint, which makes it much better for engineering, and I don't have to send off the column and get it all modified and stuff, which would cost many hundreds of dollars. So I think that's a pretty good win. It's taken quite a while to get it all back together and pieced together, but it's all done now. So the only things that are left to do for the steering column is to put on a horn button and to sort out that bottom uni and get a replacement piece. So I'll do that off camera and we'll get back to it when I'm mounting it in the car. But for now, that is all. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.